Good morning, everyone. I'm Lee Goldberg, a second year from New York. Thank you for letting me share two facets of my identity with you today: being gay and being Jewish, both of which are deeply ingrained in who I am. Each facet took me a long time to accept and cherish, but here I am, Hineni, talking to you today about how they have shaped who I am and why I give. I grew up in Wellesley, Massachusetts, a predominantly white, Christian, affluent Boston suburb. I was different than most of the other kids in school in ways both visible and invisible. Some of it was obvious. As Christmas decorations went up and my classmates awaited the arrival of Santa, I felt left out, asking my parents, why do we have to be Jewish? So, trying to make my brother Jeff and me feel included, my parents let us put out cookies and milk for Santa and left us a G.I. Joe, Pound Puppy, or Light Bright in front of the fireplace on Christmas morning. Although we were never wanting, being middle class and Jewish in Wellesley gave me a powerful sense of separation. In fourth grade, I started a new school. One day, during an open house, parents were invited to watch their kids play in gym class. When my mom arrived, she overheard the other mothers murmuring, "That's Lee Goldberg's mother." It still hurts to think of the pain and embarrassment I caused her that day. But later that year, after those moms had gotten to know me better, they told my mom, "Lee will be the first Jewish president of the United States one day." And that was my dream, to be the first Jewish president of the United States one day. I figured being Jewish would come in handy because it would make me distinctive as a candidate. And in fact, there were parts of being Jewish that I liked. I loved our family traditions, which, aside from Thanksgiving, were mostly Jewish. Passover Seders at both of my grandparents' houses, latkes at my grandmother's Hanukkah party. At home, we often lit the Shabbat candles and always lit the Hanukkah candles. As much as I liked that part of being Jewish, I disliked the religious part. I found Sunday school, Hebrew school, and services to be oppressive chores and was kicked out of class there just as I was in public school. After I celebrated my bar mitzvah, things began to change and I became more involved with Jewish life, including spending an unforgettable summer with Nefti in Israel. By the time I was in high school, I was pretty comfortable with the more obvious ways that I was different from my peers. But at the same time, there was an invisible way in which I felt different. I felt the way about boys that I was supposed to feel about girls. And it ate away at me. During middle school, I received a safe sex kit at Sunday school, of all places. The kit contained flashcards with common questions about sex and sexuality, as well as a keychain with a condom in it. Just ad-libbing here, I was like 12 years old at the time. So weird. Anyway, one of the flashcards asked a question about same-sex attraction. It said that for many teenagers, it's a phase they go through. A phase? How long is a phase? Is it a few months? A few years? All of high school and into college? This word stuck with me, and it ate away at me. If I like boys, it must just be a phase. Because if it's not a phase, then how will I have a wife and children? How will I not get AIDS? How will I be president? If it's not a phase, then my life will be nothing like the way I envisioned it to be. So I buried those feelings. Meanwhile, I got into Columbia, the college of my dreams. I was elected class president my sophomore and junior years, and one of my proudest accomplishments was planning class-wide activities where students from diverse social groups could gather together, building a sense of community on our campus in New York City. Even though I was still closeted, I was well-liked, thriving academically, and having the time of my life. But the fall of my junior year, my emotional well-being deteriorated as my anxiety grew. The proximate cause was 9/11. From my dorm uptown, I watched the World Trade Center burn. I watched the giant plume of smoke emanate from it. On the street, I looked down Broadway and saw droves of people streaming northward. Over the next few days, a noxious odor filled campus. Suddenly, New York, where I dreamed of living, felt very scary. Even riding the subway felt like a life or death experience, as the whole city waited for another shoe to drop. I viscerally felt my mortality. I realized that my dreams of having a wife and children and becoming president weren't sustaining me. I wasn't being true to myself. At that time, I still hadn't come out to anyone. I was a class president and known by nearly 1,000 of my peers, but those same classmates didn't know about the one thing that was eating me up inside. Neither did my family, the people I was closest to in the entire world. Recognizing there was no other way to relieve my pain, I took a deep breath and came out to my parents and my brother Jeff after Thanksgiving dinner in 2001. My parents were shocked, but they accepted me with the love and support they'd always shown. In his characteristically nonchalant way, Jeff simply said, "So what? You're still my brother." When I got back to school, I came out to my friends who also accepted me with love and support. Eventually, word got around the class, but my being gay didn't change a thing. This was, after all, New York City. People treated me the same as they had before, but I felt free. A tremendous weight had been lifted off of me. Not only the weight of the secret I'd been keeping, but the weight of the expectations I'd placed on myself. Being the first Jewish president was enough of a stretch, but the idea of a gay Jewish president was simply out of the question. Without this goal to anchor me, I started to lose my way. No longer sure what I wanted to do with my life, I became aimless. It was the early 2000s, and the most prominent LGBT people in public life were in entertainment. Will and Grace, Ellen, etc. Not business law or politics, the careers I aspired to. Gay marriage was gaining traction in some of the country's more liberal precincts, including my home state of Massachusetts. But the idea that it would be allowed on the national level anytime soon was nothing more than a pipe dream. And if I were to get married in Massachusetts, would that even be a real marriage? Or would it just be a pale imitation of one? And how could I possibly bring kids into that? In other words, even though I was out, being gay was still transgressive. It wasn't normal. I was still different. Being gay meant that the only way to meet a partner was at a gay bar. Looking for another way, I learned about a gay synagogue in the city and decided to check it out. After my Jewish involvement waxed in high school, it had waned in college, with my primary Jewish connection coming on holiday trips home. So when I decided to go to the gay synagogue, Congregation Beit Simchat Torah, or CBST, it wasn't because I was eager to get back in touch with my Judaism, but because I wanted to meet a nice Jewish guy. Unfortunately, there were very few men in their 20s or 30s at services, and after going a few times, I realized it wasn't for me. In the following years, I went to law school and through a mutual friend met my former partner, Brian. Brian was not Jewish, but he embraced many Jewish traditions, buying a mezuzah for our apartment, lighting the Hanukkah candles, and even asking at Passover why he always got the Haggadah with schmutz all over it. I felt happy and comfortable in my relationship with Brian, learning to accept the gay part of my identity. However, with my connection to Judaism remaining limited, I didn't even realize that another part of my identity was missing. Once I got my first job at a law firm, partners started inviting me to attend UJA Federation of New York lunches and dinners. I'd never heard of this organization and thought I was only being invited because I was Jewish. I soon found out that my being Jewish had nothing to do with the invitations. Rather, the firm was a big Federation supporter and just needed seat fillers. At those lunches and dinners, they'd show videos and give speeches about Federation's work. I learned about the federated giving model and the safety net function it provides. I learned that without funding from Federation, many charities that provide vital services to the most vulnerable members of our society would cease to exist. I learned that Federation is invaluable precisely because many charities can't raise enough money to pursue their missions on their own. At the same time, one of my friends at work encouraged me to get involved with Federation's Young Lawyers group. He said I'd have to make a donation, but I'd be able to meet other young Jewish lawyers, excellent, great, and attend programs with interesting speakers such as U.S. senators and judges. It was the first charitable gift I'd ever given that wasn't tied to a specific fundraiser, but this organization seemed to do good work. I started attending Young Lawyers Leadership Committee meetings, and my involvement quickly increased. When I join an organization and believe in it, I tend to jump in with both feet. Federation was no different. Getting more and more involved with Federation, I also realized that I wanted Judaism to play a bigger role in my life. I met with our Federation's president, telling her I was surprised they didn't have more typically Jewish activities, such as Shabbat dinners, for people like me who weren't a member of synagogues. She encouraged me to raise the idea of regular Shabbat dinners with the Young Lawyers professional. He was so excited by my advocacy that he created a new leadership role for me, community chair. Our first Shabbat dinner had a wait list, demonstrating that our community craved the types of intimate gatherings that were different than our larger events. Shabbat dinners are now a regular part of Young Lawyers programming. Eager to learn more about this remarkable organization that does so much, I continued meeting with lay leaders, including Jeff Schoenfeld, who led our Federation's strategic review. I first encountered Jeff in a meeting in 2014, where he mentioned that he'd become addicted to Federation. Recognizing a kindred spirit, Jeff and I scheduled breakfast. Jeff shared with me that our Federation had just held its first ever community conversation on LGBT engagement, convening 150 representatives from over 70 different organizations. He told me that our Federation was forming a pride group and encouraged me to get involved. Seeing this as a further way to build community, I told him I wanted to see how we could bring UJA Pride and Young Lawyers together. Most meaningfully, Jeff shared that he too was gay. That summer, I was also reconnecting with my Judaism in a new way. My two living grandparents passed away within a month of each other, and wanting to say Kaddish for them, I started exploring synagogues throughout New York, including CBST, the gay synagogue. The high holy days were approaching as the 2 months of mourning came to a close, and I wanted to go to services in New York rather than at my parents' synagogue. I decided to go to the Javits Center, where CBST hosts free services that are attended by thousands of people from New York and around the world. Gay and straight, secular and religious, Jews and non-Jews. I detested long services growing up, but somehow the 5 hours on that first Rosh Hashanah flew by. I was hooked and had found my spiritual home. After the high holy days, I started going to services every Friday. CBST became a bigger and bigger part of my life, and I joined their newly formed 20s and 30s group. The community I had looked for at CBST a decade ago was there now, and I was so excited to be part of it. Over the next year, my involvement with and donations to my two Jewish communities, Federation and CBST, continued to grow. CBST gave me solace when I split up with my partner. CBST gave me joy when I brought my parents to Shabbat services for the first time. And CBST gave me pride when gay marriage was legalized nationwide. CBST is a place where we, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender Jews who have had to fight so hard for acceptance, get to welcome the rest of the world. Quoting my friend's 2015 Rosh Hashanah membership talk, in words that now appear on CBST's website, it is comforting to feel welcome somewhere, but it is profound to be welcoming of others. Next year, I'll be chairing Federation's UJA Pride Group, and one of my goals is strengthening the relationship between Federation and CBST on the lay level, where there's space for significant overlap and an ability of each to enrich each other, just as both have enriched me. Already, Federation supports the Jewish Queer Youth Drop-In Center at our new synagogue on West 30th Street. And if you're ever in New York, I encourage you to join us on a Friday night. Providing a safe space for LGBT Jewish youth to be themselves in a way that I didn't feel I could when I was their age. Last year, I chaired Young Lawyers, and my favorite event of the year was a joint event with UJA Pride, where our two groups had the honor of hearing from the first openly lesbian federal judge in the country. And Jeff Schoenfeld, from whom I've learned so much about leadership, philanthropy, and service, became president of New York's Federation, the first openly gay man to hold that position. This is why I give. This is why I work with others to build community. Because in 2017, I am standing here before you as a gay man talking about how my life is shaped by that very identity. Last year, I joined Cabinet so I could learn from all of you and try to do better. I'm constantly trying to do better. And I'll note, Cabinet and JF&A are constantly trying to do better too. As Michelle and Jeff mentioned on Wednesday, Cabinet members insisted that last year's retreat be relocated away from Charlotte because of North Carolina's anti-LGBT law. And as you just saw, last year, JF&A also led its first ever LGBTQ mission to Israel. Now JF&A is planning on a sequel to that mission for next summer and potentially every 2 years thereafter. My parents used to send my brother and me to Sunday school with quarters for tzedakah. Now I've returned to Judaism, grateful I can give tzedakah in a way I'd never imagined. I try to stretch myself because of what my Jewish communities have done for me. Today I accept and cherish the gay and Jewish facets of my identity. Tov lahodot. It is good to give thanks. These words are inscribed all over my synagogue, and today they are inscribed on my heart as I share my story with you. It is good to give thanks to my Jewish communities, including all of you, my friends. Thank you.